Gauteng police have seized over 220 firearms belonging to a private security company in Krugersdorp. Some of the guns have been linked to cash and transit heists, the attempted murder of police officers, and armed business robberies. The guns were found between Gauteng and Mpumalanga, with about 377 firearms belonging to the company still unaccounted for. The security company, operating under multiple trading names, has been ordered to present the remaining firearms. Police are investigating whether the firm has been illegally renting out the guns to third parties.
The National Tracking and Tracing Task Team under Operation Boyisa has seized 226 firearms from a registered private security company after uncovering serious contraventions of the Firearms Control Act 2000. The Act places strict obligations on license holders to ensure safe storage, proper authorization and accountability for all firearms. In terms of Section 121, it is an offence to contravene or fail to comply with any provision of the Act, breach conditions of a license, permit or authorization, or disregard any lawful notice or requirement issued under the Act. In total, 226 firearms were confiscated in the past weeks, while 377 company-registered firearms remain unaccounted for. A Section 106 notice compelled the company to present these outstanding firearms. Operating under multiple trading names, the company's registered storage address were also found to be incorrect. Several seized firearms are already linked to cash in transit robberies, attempted murder of police officials, and armed business robberies. All weapons will undergo forensic IBIS testing to trace additional crimes. Police are also investigating whether the company is illegally renting its firearms to third parties, which is a direct contravention of the Firearms Control Act.
Let's now speak to Chad Thomas from IRS Forensic Investigations. Chad, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. So over 300 firearms are still unaccounted for that belong to this security company. Based on your own knowledge, how common is it for firearms from private security firms to be recovered in criminal activities?
Very good morning to you and the viewers. It's a very disconcerting case, this. One must understand that the security industry has played a major role in supporting the police in the fight against crime through projects known as E2, which is Business Against Crime South Africa, as well as through the Civilian Crime Intelligence Network. And the majority of security companies out there are doing a very good job in the support of police officers as force multipliers. But for the last couple of years, we've spoken extensively about bad actors within the security industry that have seen a loophole in a way in which to obtain legitimate weapons to use for illegitimate purposes. We have the case of the assassination of Marumo Pena, the Department of Home Affairs whistleblower, where it's linked to a KZN security company, and that the weapons that were used were most probably belonging to that particular security company. We had Mark Liffman in Cape Town, together with other nefarious Cape Town underworld figures, buying up security companies so they could take over the club security in Cape Town. We have so many different cases of rogue actors buying security companies, like Vusi Katpatlala, who's currently in custody, who owned a security company known as Cat Security. So it is of immense concern that there are bad actors out there that are using a loophole within the law to obtain legal weapons for illegitimate uses.
Are these bad actors quite prevalent? Are you seeing a growth within those activities over time?
We saw it emerge within the taxi industry, where taxi bosses would buy security companies that had code of bodies and had firearms. They would then use those security officers and those firearms to fight proxy wars against other taxi bosses. They then realized that there was an opportunity to use these weapons and these trained security officers for other purposes other than security and other than fighting proxy wars over taxi turf. We saw them getting rented out for CRT heist. We saw them getting rented out for murder for hire, for kidnap for ransom. So it's a growing trend, but it still makes up an absolute minority of the greater security industry, which is a massive industry in South Africa.
What vulnerabilities do you believe exist within these private companies where operations might be exploited by criminals to obtain these guns?
Look, it's a concern because if you have a registered security company and you have members driving in vehicles and they're pulled over by the police, and the police find that these are in fact registered vehicles to a security company, registered weapons to a security company, and that these people are in fact security officers, they're going to think that they perhaps are attending duties to escort valuable cargo, or they're on their way to a scene or a site, whatever the case may be, and perhaps ignore that these could actually be criminals that have disguised themselves legitimately as security officers using registered security firearms. And the renting out of firearms has become an extremely prolific problem in South Africa. We saw a few years ago that there were certain police members, one in Alex, for example, that was arrested for renting out weapons to members involved in CIT heists. We saw weapons from Nord Police Station landing up being sold that were in the SAP-13 storage facility. We saw a colonel in Vereniging that was meant to be in charge of the destruction of weapons, selling weapons to the Cape underworld. So criminals will find any way in which to manipulate the system to obtain access to illegal weapons. And it's very interesting that the minister that's on special leave for police, Senzo Mchunu, actually wanted to change legislation earlier this year, specifically in respect of what we're now seeing, the illicit use of firearms that are meant to be used legitimately by security companies.
So in him changing that law, or how would it assist in terms of these firearms not finding themselves in the hands of criminals?
I think it looked to some of these loopholes that we now see in the police uncovering in respect of how these firearms are being, in inverted commas, rented out to other security companies that may not necessarily have the formal authorization to carry weapons and issue weapons. If a security company does not have that authorization, but they have the opportunity to provide armed guards at a site, and they don't have that necessary licensing, they then go to a company that may have those firearms and work out a deal to trade under their name or to use their weapons. And that is fundamentally incorrect. Every company has to have its own licensing. Every company has to have its own code of body. And I think that is one of the main loopholes that the minister was looking to close. I don't think they want to take weapons away from the security industry. They just want to have more control over the weapons that are used within the security industry so that we don't have situations we're currently dealing with in respect of this company in Krugersdorp that has been raided.
I mean, these firearms were seized under the National Tracking and Tracing Task Team under Operation Buyisa. Do you find that this system is well integrated into the Firearms Control Act, and does it facilitate real-time monitoring of these firearms?
There's no real-time monitoring. Both the South African Police Service, together with their partner CIRA, and CIRA, although it's a regulatory authority, it actually falls under the Department of Police, have a lot to do in order to ensure that there's accountability by security companies and that there's sufficient inspections that take place to ensure that there's control over those weapons and those weapons don't land up in the hands of third parties who may have malicious intent. I think CIRA and the South African Police Service have a big job ahead of them, but we must always keep in mind that the security industry is so very important to us right now. They're supplying so much in respect of force multipliers to the South African Police Service to assist in combating crime, that we cannot have a few bad actors destroy an entire industry that is vital to safeguard South African citizens.
Well, it certainly is very alarming. I mean, 377 of those firearms are still unaccounted for. They are out there. And to have companies such as this in Krugersdorp operating seems quite intentional in how they're putting those firearms out there. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us this morning. That was Chad Thomas from IRS Forensic Investigations.